thank you very much. I'll have to start by saying I'm very nervous because I was planning to do this presentation on my machine. I think Vadim already mentioned it, but because of some problems, I'm using his machine. So if I start swiping into the wrong space or not working out the natural scroll on his machine rather than mine, please excuse me. So, in this session, I want to give you a quick overview of some of the features in Opera Dragonfly, some of the stuff that you might have already seen, and some of the new things that are coming down the pipeline later on. Some features that aren't even available to the public yet. So I'm going to give you a little sneak preview of some of the features. First of all, who here has actually used Opera Dragonfly? Only a few people. Oh, okay. Well, a few people. That's good. That's good. Opera Dragonfly is part of our various developer tools that we've got at Opera. Compared to other tools like the mobile emulator, for instance, that we'll see later on, Opera Dragonfly is actually built into Opera itself. It comes as part of the browser. And yes, it is very similar to comparable tools that you've got in, say, Firefox or Chrome or other browsers. Even IE's F12 tools are quite good now. So we're kind of, it's a little bit of an arms race at the moment between the different manufacturers to get good developer tools. So Opera Dragonfly, there is an extensive website with documentation for it. If you want to actually work out how to use every single function that Dragonfly has, there is a lot of stuff in Dragonfly. I was hoping to be able to show you every single button in our interface, but then I realized that would take about 4 hours, and I'm sure you actually want to go for lunch after this. But yeah, there's a blog where we actually post every time there's a new feature or we're planning to do certain kind of extensions, certain things to the interface, for instance, we try to get feedback. So there's a lot of information if you start off from that particular page. So Opera Dragonfly, in a nutshell, you could say it's actually an HTML5 web application. Dragonfly itself, yes, it opens in a special part of the Opera window, but at its core, everything that actually makes up Dragonfly is purely HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a web application as well, an HTML5 web application. It uses application cache or app cache to actually store itself on your local machine. That means that because of the limitations of app cache, the very first time, if you had never installed Opera before and you never started Opera Dragonfly before, the very first time it needs a network connection to just grab the files and read the application manifests as any kind of web-based app cache HTML5 application would. But after that, you don't need to be online anymore. It will just, if there is no internet connection or if there's a problem fetching any new updates, it will just use the local version of Opera Dragonfly or the locally cached files that are already on the machine. Also, as with traditional app cache applications, like web applications, if there is an update, if you open Dragonfly and there is an update, it will download the updated version of all the various HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, but these won't kick in until the next time you start Dragonfly. So we're working on making it a little bit slicker and actually having an interface that comes up and says, a new version was downloaded, you want to restart it. But for all intents and purposes, you need to close Dragonfly and open it again, and then you're guaranteed that you're actually using the very latest version that is available at the moment. And Dragonfly initially was developed on a traditional release cycle, so we would wait for months and months and months until it was actually ready, finished, baked, no errors, and then it will be shipped. Since version 1 stable came out, we've actually switched to a rapid release cycle for Opera Dragonfly. There are 3 separate release channels with varying degrees of how much they've been tested, how stable they are, and you can actually, as an end user, as a developer, switch between them. The way to switch Opera Dragonfly is you just go into Opera Config, you find the developer tools section there, and there are the 3 main channels that we have are experimental, that is as soon as we even think of a new feature, we code it up, it's not been tested at all, we just pop it into experimental. So if you're running on experimental, you'll have the absolutely very latest code that's there. It could completely die. Some things might not work at all. But that's the absolutely freshest one. Once the certain features from the experimental have undergone some testing and we know they're reasonably stable, they're promoted to cutting edge. That's kind of stable plus any kind of new stuff that is stable as well. But if you want to really play it safe, the default URL, if you just installed Opera, is basically the last one, which is just the stable release itself. You'll have to wait, sometimes quite a long time, because that really means a new feature has undergone months of testing, user testing, internal testing, just to make sure that things don't break. So I recommend, if you want to get a little best of both worlds, go for cutting edge. It should work. There might be a few niggles here and there. I am going to demo some stuff on cutting edge just to be safe, because some of the features that I was trying last night on experimental actually broke in the latest build. They will probably work again tomorrow when we push another release through. But I would say cutting edge is kind of the middle ground. It's fairly stable to use, and you get to start experiencing some of the new features that we're actually working on. And now I'm going to almost seamlessly sit down at my machine, because I'm very old, and actually open up Dragonfly and just start showing you some of the features that are there. So apologies for the ones in the back. If you can't see me, I'm still very pretty. I know, and I'm a liar. Right, so one-handed, with one microphone in one hand. So for those who haven't ever opened Opera Dragonfly, there's a few ways in which you can open Dragonfly. Like most traditional debugging tools, if I'm just on any regular page, I can just right-click, and Vadim will now nod when it says inspect element. That one? Oh, well, yeah, I could work it out. I can recognize some of the characters. It would take me about half an hour, though, to go like... There we go. See, it's a seamless demos. Oh, and of course, the whole interface is also in Russian. The beauty of doing demos on a machine that's not yours. Anyway, so as you would with any other development tool, you'll see various tabs. By default, when you do inspect element, you basically see the document view of the element. No, it's okay. It's okay. It adds to the excitement of seeing me struggle with Russian. So, as with any other tool, you can actually go through the page, you can highlight elements. You see the DOM view here. We'll get back to that in a minute. But you also see primarily things like the styling here on the right-hand side. So as you work your way through, as you highlight certain elements, you can actually, it's getting, oh, you've got natural scroll. Unnatural scroll, I call it. You can actually, you see the various CSS that is applied to that particular element that's currently highlighted. I can go in, I can disable things, I can change the values, and I can, if I'm focused on a particular value, I can just use, cursor up, cursor down to step through certain things. I'll make it a little bit bigger. I can change colors, that sort of stuff. I can also, if I open this up, of course, change the actual text, chicken, 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 chicken. So, nothing new. You've all seen that before. Now, one little detail that might be obvious for most people, but I just want to emphasize, is that the DOM view, the document view, is different from view source. If I can remember how to do it. So here's a really, really minified HTML5 valid document. If you haven't seen it yet, in HTML5, a lot of stuff is optional. You don't have to open and close the HTML element. You don't have to open and close the head or the body, mainly because every single browser, even today or even before HTML5 was specified, actually implies those things. It generates those in the DOM anyway. So just to give you an idea why the document is different from the source, here is this minimal document. If I now open that in Opera, and I'll just do my shortcut to get Dragonfly up, you'll see that in the actual document itself, these things that I didn't have in my source are actually generated. So just to give you an idea, this is actually an idealized version of what the browser itself has actually done to the document. If I had JavaScript that generated elements, I would actually see them here as well. For extra nerd cred, you could also show the actual text nodes, because if you really started working in the old school kind of creating DOM nodes by hand, you'll know that there are, text nodes inside normal elements, which is a real pain. But if you're a real nerd, or whatever the Russian word for very successful man at a party is, you can actually turn this on and you'll see the exact text nodes that are being generated, say if you've got scripts, etc. But as most of us are normal human beings, I'll just turn that particular thing off. So that is pretty much what you get in the initial document panel. There's other things you can actually see, if I remember it, yeah, for each node that you've currently highlighted, you see the various attributes that are there. Really nothing new. Now, where was my presentation? Oops. Is it 4 fingers? Okay. So, but a lot of the functionality that's in most of these debugging tools, including Opera Dragonfly, has to do with JavaScript debugging. Because that is really, yes, we can look at what the DOM is, and in certain cases that's important if you're generating stuff and things don't quite work. Or you can check that the styling is applying the way you expect it. But a lot of work really involves JavaScript debugging, particularly in today's web applications. Now, I'll admit I'm not a super JavaScripter. I know enough JavaScript to be dangerous. So some of the functionality I'm only going to touch on. And I'm usually dangerous only to myself. But I'll just quickly show you some of the features that you might be using when you're doing JavaScript debugging. So at the absolute simplest level, the easiest errors that you get in JavaScript are syntax errors, because they are very obvious. They actually throw up errors on your screen. Just to give you an idea, natural scrolling. So if here I've got a little script, I've got an actual error, a syntax error in the script. If I try to execute it, it will actually throw an error. So those are the simple errors that you might have in your scripting. They're the trivial ones, because now you can see, okay, oh, it's a typo. It's event listening with a capital V. I apologize for the slightly small screen here. So those are, hey, I'll get a guitar in a minute. Thank you. Good evening. Where's my balalaika? Right. Super. Anyway, so yeah, these are the absolute simplest errors that you can find. But with a lot of JavaScript that we do today, clearly these are very rare. The more insidious kind of errors are the logic errors. Things where you've written your script, there are no syntax errors as such, but things just don't work. Particularly if you're doing loads of stuff that triggers on particular events, for instance. Everything's event-driven. Sometimes it's really difficult to actually work out what is going on. Are functions actually being called or not? Because it's a bit like a black box. You don't get an idea. You don't see what's actually running. So a lot of functionality in these debugging tools, including Opera Dragonfly, actually have to do with inspecting what's currently happening inside your scripts at any given point in time. So I'll just jump back out. I'm getting used to your natural scrolling, which is crazy. So the old school way of debugging stuff, knowing, for instance, what's the value of this variable when the script is running, is obviously the old school alert, which is great. It's great stuff. But it has a few problems. It doesn't look too cool. And particularly if you've got something like, a really long loop or something like that, potentially, you're running, you have to OK loads of things at the same time. You're stopping and starting the flow of your application. If you're doing things like on click, on focus, on blur, you actually keep losing the focus as well. And in some cases, if you're really throwing like hundreds of alerts, you might end up in a situation where you just have to close the browser because you just can't stop for clicking the OK button. If you're reacting to, say, a mouse move, for instance, as soon as you try to go to the OK button, you're already triggered another 100 or 1,000 alerts. So it works in certain situations. I know my colleague Bruce is still a fan of alert. Yeah. But there are better ways of going about these sorts of things. So one of the ways that a lot of programmers use, I mean, we know that from IDEs, that's now also in tools like Dragonfly and all the others, has to do with breakpoints. So here I've got, and yeah, most of these examples, the code is trivially stupid, so please, excuse that, but it's just to make it clear what's going on. I've got a little function here on this particular page. It doesn't do anything sexy as such. There is a local variable being defined. I could probably make the, oops, hang on. Make that a bit bigger. There we go. There's a local variable defined. It fires on load, and it's supposed to just add that particular text to my page, but it doesn't actually do it. Nothing's actually happened here. So, as I said, there is no syntax error as such. So, at the very least, I want to make sure that there is no problem that this anonymous function is actually fired at all. That's something that I don't actually see from my normal execution. One way to do that is actually setting a breakpoint and saying to the browser, whenever you reach this particular line in the script processing, stop. So at least I know that that particular script is being executed and that there might be other types of problems. So if I just rerun this particular page, I'll see, yeah, it actually worked. I'll see that it stops at that particular line. If I was in any other tab, it will switch me to the scripts tag. You'll notice here, script processing has actually been paused because I've reached the breakpoint. And once I'm here, I can start to do things like inspecting what's going on, what's the current state in this particular application. I can see what's the call stack, like how many functions deep am I in. I can check in this particular context that I'm in, what are the variables. So yeah, A is actually defined, that's fine. And I can start to do things like, okay, well, the error must be somewhere here, it's being fired. I can do, if I keep shift pressed, I get these tooltips, and I can actually execute in Dragonfly. Come on. I can execute actual evaluations. It doesn't like to do it. There we go. So here I see that that particular inner HTML is undefined because I actually mistyped it. So it's a mistypo, mistypo, that's a new word. And basically, instead of HTML in uppercase, I used lowercase. So it's a logic error rather than an actual syntax error. So this is great. I can set breakpoints that just stop every time it gets to that particular line in the scripting. There are variations on the theme of breakpoints. I can do things like, where am I? Conditional breakpoints. For instance here, another trivial script. It starts off and it adds loads of spans with numbers in my particular page. And it executes that loop 100 times. Again, in a similar way to alerts, I don't want to set a breakpoint right in the middle. Assume that something is going wrong and I want to check what is going wrong. I don't want to set a breakpoint in the middle of that loop because then it will keep stopping 100 times. Every time it gets to that, I'll have to say, okay, carry on. Say I know in a theoretical way that once I reach 30 in this counter, something weird happens. Assume that it's doing other calculations or something, and I get some weirdness when it reaches 30. What I can do is, rather than set a hard breakpoint, I can actually add, is that the right one? Yeah. I can add a condition to it, and that basically says, break when this particular thing is true. So in this case, I'll say when I equals 30, it should actually break. So if I rerun this page, we'll see that, yeah, it went up to 29. Once it hits 30, I'm in the breakpoint, and it actually stops. And the last variation on breakpoints is, where is it? Event. Oh, did I remove it? Okay. I can also do, yeah, let's do that on the same page then, on the conditional one. I'll remove this particular conditional breakpoint. I can also set breakpoints. Yeah, that's probably the one. Yeah. Breakpoints based on events that are happening in the page. Rather than having to explicitly find in my script where is the onload behavior, what's going on, or there might not even be a function that is waiting for a particular event, I can still explicitly say, I want to basically stop processing when a particular event is being fired without any extra listeners that I need to add to that. So I could say, for instance, here, trivial example, every time the load event is fired on this page, so it will only happen once, actually break. So let's just carry on this. I'll reload that. And you'll see, even though I didn't set any hard breakpoints, when load actually fired, that particular thing happened. So lastly, if I'm doing any work in my actual test environment, rather than deploying it on the live server, I can also explicitly call the debugger from my JavaScript. If I know that I really want to work in that particular function and start inspecting stuff, I can very simply, by just using the debugger statement, oops, sorry, I've still got the load event there. Restart that one. So I can actually, once it hits debugger, it will also do exactly the same thing. So these are variations on the same theme. I can basically stop execution and do certain things. Now, not every time do you want to actually stop execution of stuff. If you're doing something like an interactive environment, you've got menus that are being opened and closed, you don't want to stop necessarily. You just want to get an idea of, I don't know, what is the value of this current variable, or actually say, you know, log a little message that says, yes, this function has fired. So you know conceptually that your scripting is actually being triggered, and then you can still narrow down if there were certain problems. One way of doing that, and I'm going to jump ahead here, is like most other tools, Opera Dragonfly has a console. I'm just going to open it in a completely separate panel. The console itself, think of it as a command line tool. I can do simple statements here and actually execute JavaScript directly. Tag name, P. Say I want to just select whatever the paragraph is. It actually gives me an expando right in here in the console itself. If I click it, it actually highlights it on the page, and I can open it and start kind of digging in what's particularly in that page. I don't necessarily have to do single line commands. I mean, that's the simplest case. I just want to output something. I can do multi-line. That's currently not in the Dragonfly documentation. We're updating that at the moment. By keeping Shift and Enter, I enter multi-line. And then I can do, I don't know, let's do a trivial. A is hello, I can't type. And then, I don't know, alert A. Let's bring alert back because it's cool. And then command enter, it actually executes that multi-line stuff. So that's quite handy for certain things that you can do. Console itself is also available in every other one of these tabs. This is basically the full tab console. We also got a little heads-up display version of the console. You can, either by clicking that button or using escape, you can bring it up anywhere within the other panels. That can be quite handy if you start to, I don't know, set breakpoints, and then you want the console as well. Because one of the interesting aspects of the console is that if my scripting is stopped at any particular point in time because of a breakpoint, because of an error, or anything like that, the command line is actually in the context of where the scripting engine is at the moment. So here I've stopped the script, and I think I went one step ahead. So in this loop from 0 to 100, there is a local variable var, I, that's purely inside the anonymous functions. It's nowhere in the global scope. But because I'm stopped, I think I'm stopped anyway. Let's just make doubly sure. I'm stopped at that particular line inside the anonymous function, inside the loop. My console should now, hopefully, be in the same context as that breakpoint. So if I just do I, it will actually show me 0. Not undefined, but 0 because I'm on the first run through of this particular function. So if I run it a few more times, come on, again, I do I and it shows me 3. So that's a nice little thing to remember. The console is actually running in the context, and if your scripting is paused or stopped, it's actually in that. So it gives you another way of analyzing things that are happening. And with the console, I mean, one of the very popular things you can do with the console, let me clean this up a little bit. There we go, and close that one. Is also that from your script itself, you can actually, is this actually slowly descending? That's all right, don't worry. Don't hit me in the face. It's okay, it's okay. Adds to the charm. So there we go. is there are actually loads of variations on the theme inside the console, what you can do. One of the most trivial things that you can do with console, as I said, you want the scripts to keep running, but you just want to see what is a certain value at this particular point in time. A trivial thing that you can do is using console log. So rather than an alert which stops execution, you have to OK it, it potentially fires loads of extra new events. A popular thing is, and the simplest thing you can do with console is you console log stuff. So inside here we got a loop 0 to 5 or 0 to 4, and as it's executing, it didn't stop anyway. Script execution didn't stop, so this is useful if you are, I don't know, listening to events, want to actually see the thing running. But at the same time, in the console, it just logged that particular value. Nothing, it's not rocket science. But if you want to take it further, I've almost never had the need for it. But if you want to be, whatever the word was, something, a very successful JavaScripter, I think. There are variations on the theme. So with the console API, you can actually get quite a few other things. So console log is the standard one. You can do console warn, console info, console error. And just to give you an idea how they manifest themselves in the console itself, the first few is just a different color, so you can actually get an overview. You can start time tests with console time. You give it a name, and then you execute some functions, and then you end that particular time, and it will actually show you how much time that particular block of code took. So you can do very basic profiling in terms of how fast things are running, and we've got it in microseconds because that's how accurate we are. So that's, I don't know, if you really care about shaving off the microseconds off your execution, that's the way to go. You can also, if you're really throwing a lot of console logs and stuff, create expandable groups. So, for instance, here, the entire loop that I did a loop for, whatever, 100. It's actually showing as an expandable thing. So, you know, if you get the need to really work with your console, there's a lot of things you can do here with that particular thing. Right, that, oops, what's going on? 4 fingers. Okay. So yeah, we covered that. Basically, you want to know what's going on in most JavaScript processing, and we've seen that. Yeah, a new thing that I'm going to show you really quickly is, as I said, we've got the various different releases, and I'm going to show you something that if you're on the even the cutting edge version, you won't see yet. But one of the features that we've got, how am I doing for time? How much have I got left? Up to 15. Haha, excellent. Until people that are really hungry start killing me. Is network, the network dialog. Is that the one? Yes, that's the one. This is the one that you currently see. If you go to the network panel, let's just open that as an example. It does basically what you'd expect from a network dialog, but it's not the sexiest one. There's very limited options here. If you're doing a lot of loading, you have to constantly kind of resize it. I am going to switch now to the experimental branch, purely to show you some of the new functionality that we've recently added to the network dialog itself. Hopefully this will work. Yes, unnatural scrolling. So whenever I switch between different versions, I need to close and open. It tells me I might have to close the browser, but I never come into a situation where I have to. I just need to close Dragonfly and reopen it. And you'll see that the network dialog itself looks a lot more fully featured. I'm actually going to open another site here. I'm going to open Google Maps. No offense to any Yandex people here, but it was throwing a JavaScript error when I was opening that one. So I thought I won't shame you, but I just did. So here we go. It's a lot nicer. It auto resizes as soon as more stuff is being loaded. It adapts itself. It always tries to fit to width. Any of these items that are being loaded, if I hover over them, it gets a little bit tight on a small screen, but whenever I hover over them, I can actually see how much time each individual request took in terms of scheduling the request, sending the request, waiting for the reply comes in. I can really dig into all the details of each individual network transaction, how much time, how many milliseconds it actually took to get that particular thing. Obviously, it's a flow diagram, so I can actually see the order in which things have come in and have loaded. If I'm interested in other details, I can switch to more of a diagrammatic order of things, and I can switch to, I just want to order it by duration, so I know which one took the longest. I can also then filter it by particular things, just the markup, just the styles, just the scripts, etc., etc., XHR requests that are being fired. And now that it's loaded, I'm going to switch back to this. I'm going to empty this, and here on Google Maps, I'm just going to start moving about. And you'll see that as I move about, you see all the events are still, it's still live, they're still firing. I can actually go in and see what that particular thing was. So this was a good example because it keeps loading image tiles. So a nice little feature to have. Similarly, resources panel, you can do that sort of stuff as well. You just see what's currently being loaded, and you can actually dig into the various images and scripts, etc. If it's a script, I can then jump and actually edit that particular script. So that's all I'm going to show you about Dragonfly itself live. I think. Which way? Yes, that way. Obviously, one of the really cool features that we've had for ages in Opera Dragonfly is remote debugging. All the other tools are now slowly trying to catch up, and they pretend that it's actually the latest, coolest thing that they've invented. We've even had it in Opera Dragonfly, I'll say forever, but at least for 5 or 6 years. Well, since I can remember, we've had that. Because Opera has been on mobile devices and TVs and everything else for such a long time, we actually built Opera Dragonfly from the start to be remote debugging compatible. And it is true remote debugging, I would say, because some of the solutions that are coming out at the moment, a lot of them you need to actually tether your device to your debugging machine. You maybe need to run the Android SDK, so that's another 50 gigabytes off your hard drive and everything else. All you need with the Opera model of remote debugging is the two devices, basically your debugger, your development machine, and whatever device you want to debug remotely, need to see each other, which in most cases means they need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. Now, I had this ready, but I had it ready for the IP address of my machine, Vadim, so it's okay, it's okay. Is that network preferences? Yeah, like a native. Spasibo. Okay, so, if you switch that monitor to the tablet. I've got a tablet here. Hopefully it will work. Technology, HTML4, please. Hey! So there we go. Thank you very much. So that's Opera Mobile running on my tablet here. You can actually see a quick glimpse of my email. So say I want to debug this machine, this instance of Opera Dragonfly from my machine. Let's work out the IP address. I had it ready, but it's now different. All I need to do on the device itself, I need to go to Opera Debug. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Okay, edit that. It's not the most user-friendly, I'll admit, at this stage. 1047.206. So what I do basically on my debugger side is, just to avoid confusion, I'll just uncouple this into its own window. Make it slightly smaller.
Если вам не видно, присаживайтесь поближе, здесь очень много места. Правда, поздновато, но все равно.
Are you already warning them that I'm going to overrun by about an hour now? No, okay. So I've uncoupled Dragonfly in its own window just so I don't get confused by seeing something at the top, but I'm actually debugging this. What you need to do is basically just prime your development machine that now acts as a server, and you want this client to connect to the server. That's completely the opposite of, say, the WebKit model of remote debugging, where your device is the server and your development machine is the client, which is why in that situation, most of those WebKit-based systems have some kind of pin security. because we're doing it the other way around, you're explicitly connecting your device to the server itself. So we don't have pin security as such. The IP address of explicitly going there is actually the security. So hopefully, if the gods of Wi-Fi are with me, if I hit connect here, yes, thank you, I am now remote debugging this particular page. So at the moment, I'm remote debugging the actual connector debugger. Obviously, if I now tap around here, it's a very boring example, I can actually see how things are changing. I'll just put that here. Look, no hands. I'm actually now just gonna manually change the location from here because I don't want to play around with the tablet at all. Should I just do that? Now, oh, I can't type, can I? What did I do wrong? Windows. Oh, there we go. Hey, I'm the coolest JavaScripter there is. So I'll just go back. Hopefully, come on, please. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. No, it's not doing it. Has it still got the connection? Or did it flake out? No, it didn't. I think it's because of the execution itself. Never mind. Anyway, I can change, obviously, do exactly all the boring stuff that I've just shown you for the last 40 minutes. I can do here as well. I can change the actual text on the device. Yeah, well, I was trying that, avoiding that. But yes, Vadim, I will. Go for that one. Thank you. See, that makes more sense. I really wanted to do a remote debugging, so yeah, I'm on this particular page. So I can do exactly the same thing that I showed you before. I can go, well, as I said, I'll tap here to actually set focus to that. And I can go here and actually do chicken, 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 and etc. Change colors, all of that stuff. Yeah. So all of that, and particularly if I'm doing kind of JavaScripting stuff, and I'm doing, say, a mobile-specific version, testing on an actual device is probably the best idea because you want to have, see how it really behaves, how the network actually behaves on such a device. If you're doing touch events, you want to actually test that real touch events, multi-touch is working correctly. But it still lets you actually do development without having to now throw loads of alerts on the actual device itself. So as I said, we've had that for absolute ages. And we're improving on that, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. So I'm going to uncouple the two devices. So yeah, you can probably just switch back to HDMI 1 on that one. Thank you. My lovely assistant, Vadim. It's when I perform magic. So obviously, there I am. Yeah. Obviously, the IP address stuff, that's currently what you need to do. You prime it, and you can do it. So this is great, being able to do remote debugging of a device. But say you're working on a really nice, complex layout, and you want to make sure it works on 5 or 6 different form factors, tablets, small phones, old phones, new phones, and everything else. Unless you have unlimited time and budget, like I obviously don't, you really can't afford to have all those devices with you at all times and connect them all and do loads of testing. It can be painful and can be expensive, and sometimes devices just aren't available to do that particular thing. So what do you do if, say, in the simplest case, you just want to test that, say, your site with media queries and viewport and everything else, how it behaves in different situations? Well, one of the tools that we've got with Opera is the Opera Mobile Emulator. Now, it's exactly the same code base that you'd find on the real Opera Mobile that you install on your various devices, say on Android or S60 phones. It's just wrapped up as a native application. And you can run that, well, there are versions for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux, so it's cross-browser. It's very small. It's not like a 10 gigabyte full-fledged SDK that you're downloading. You're really just downloading a small wrapped-up version of the mobile browser. So it's quite easy, doesn't need any setup. It's just an installer, run it, and you get it. Just going to quickly demo that here. I've got it here. When you start it up, you just get a launcher. There are some ready-made profiles here. I'm just going to start. You can start as many devices as you want. I'm going to be a bit exotic and go an LG Optimus one, an HTC Wildfire, and say a Samsung Tab. Why not? So basically, it can spawn many different emulator instances. I'm getting window confusion here. Come on, where is it? Yeah, so we got that. And say I want to now test how a particular site works in different situations on different viewport sizes. That's something I can now do nice and easy here. I can see how this particular site, no, that's the wrong one, works from like a tablet down to the really old small phones to kind of the more recent type phones. So it's a nice little feature. Of course, you can also do what I call local remote debugging. You can connect, you can go to Opera Debug in any of these emulator instances as well and connect it to Dragonfly running on exactly the same machine. It's nice because then the IP address is just the loopback, 127.0.0.1. I'm not going to waste time showing you that particular thing. But as I say, it's quite a nice way of working. If all you want to do is test certain things like how is my viewport kicking in, because that's one of the things, particularly say if you're doing media query type layouts, it's not enough to just resize your browser window because the browser itself doesn't react to things like DPI, different DPI settings, or viewport itself. On real devices, it will look different, and this emulates more how actual real devices will react to those particular things. Sometimes it can be a bit tight if you want to spawn a giant tablet size on your small development screen. There's an additional setting that when you spawn a new device, you can actually, it's manual at the moment, we're hoping to add a little interface. You can actually say only, spawn a tablet that's 1280 by 800, but only show it at 75%, so you can actually save some space on your desktop while you're developing. And as I said, you can do local remote debugging, and it works exactly the same way. One of the nice features I didn't actually mention with Opera Dragonfly is when you're doing remote debugging on certain devices, you can even take a screenshot of what's happening on the current device without any of the ADB stuff if you're doing Android or anything like that. Why emulate? As I said, if you haven't got 100 devices, is the next best thing, better than using your browser, because in the mobile emulator, you still get actual real touch events that are being fired. It's single touch, you can't emulate multi-touch. Well, on Mac, it can sort of work. You can sort of do multi-touch, but it's not very reliable because you don't actually see where you're touching. But it fires real touch events. It reacts to viewport, and it reacts to media queries correctly. Because if you try to do device pixel ratio or device width-based media queries, they just won't show on your desktop. Upcoming features, really quickly. I think yesterday there was mention of profilers in the, was it the MailRU presentation? One of the presentations anyway. We've got a build of a profiler for Opera Dragonfly as well. Now, the feature itself, it's a completely separate Dragonfly version, purely because we haven't integrated that with the regular stuff that you get in Dragonfly, like document scripts, etc., because those affect performance in the way that we've currently architected Opera. But if you go to that particular blog post there, you find the actual special URL, and then you just put it into Opera config like you would switching between experimental, etc. And you can profile basically what's happening inside your pages when a page is loaded, the different steps that the browser takes, like calculating layout, reflowing it when something happens on the screen, etc. I'm not going to go into a demo, but check it out. There's some people have already started using that. You can see, for instance, how performant CSS is in that particular sense. You can see, if you need to optimize your CSS and what's actually happening inside the browser. Lastly, I'm going to show you two quick videos. What I did on my holidays. Oh, I pressed the wrong button, but I'm already at the end. Now, bear with me 1 second. So there's two things that we're currently working on in Opera Dragonfly. They're features that actually need changes to the browser itself. So it's something that you can't even get currently if I give you the URL to pop into your Opera config. It's something that actually needed re-architecting inside the browser. I've videoed it, and I'm showing it here in a special version. We call it the Gogi build. I hear that Gogi is actually a funny word in Russian. I don't know, I don't hear you laughing. But basically, it's a very unstyled version of the browser. and it only runs in Linux and Windows. So just going to show you one of the features that we've got. I'm actually going to fast forward. That loads of people wanted is if you've got minified code, it's cumbersome to work with. And basically we have pretty print now, like most other such tools as well. So you can turn it on, it will reload once and actually, go on a new line whenever there's a semicolon, etc. It's still not 100% perfect if, everything is still minified, so all the variables, in things like jQuery are still just one letter. But it can help you if you're looking at other people's code, other people's sites. Pretty print it, at least you can start getting an idea of, what's actually going on. Makes debugging a lot easier, we can actually break at different points. So that's one feature that, has been requested for absolute ages, and we now will have soon. Where's the other version? Is that the one? Yeah. And then the latest one we've seen when I was doing the remote debugging, I had to actually know the IP address and type it in. On a device, it can be a little bit annoying. So again, using a Gogi build of both the browser, both the browser and the mobile emulator, if you will, we actually now worked on getting UPnP-based recognition of Dragonfly. So I'm priming Dragonfly on the right-hand side to actually be a server, and then in this special version of Opera Mobile, it will find its way into the actual devices soon. You can actually see it recognizes which Dragonfly servers are on the current network, and you just basically one button press to connect, no more typing in IP addresses. So just makes it nice and easy to work with. I'm on the home stretch now. Where am I? Oh yeah, I went out of full screen. What? So it's not L for full screen then, is it? Command Shift R. Jesus Christ. It's not doing anything. What? Okay. Where's View Full Screen? Is that the right? Is that?
Arrows in the right corner.
Okay. Bloody Max. Yeah, so I've shown you that. As I mentioned before, have a look at the blog. Anytime we work on something new, we announce it there. We try to be very open about these sorts of things now. Any new features that we bring out, we love to hear people's ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and everything else about it. So don't be shy, comment on things. Opera Dragonfly itself is actually open source in the sense that all our code, the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, are available. We're not quite super cool on Git, but we're on Bitbucket. For whatever reason. But you can go there, you can, I don't know. I think it's because it's Atlassian and it integrates with Jira that we use internally. I don't know, something like that. We're just different. You can go there, you can grab the code. You can even contribute to the code, although we have very strict code guidelines, so don't be annoyed if your super feature that you're kind of pushing towards us doesn't make it in. But, add suggestions, questions, anything like that, put them there. If you've got any questions at all or any ideas, we're on Twitter, Odevrel for the Opera Developer Relations, and if you just want to do it in Russian, Odevrel RU. And yeah, if you want to ask really embarrassing questions of Mr. Vadim here, that's his email address, and if you want to tell me how wonderful I am, that's my email address. And with that, thank you very much.
Спасибо Патрику. Если действительно у кого-то прям зреет вопрос, который он хочет озвучить всем, пожалуйста, но лучше по-английски. Если нет, давайте на обед, вопросы почтой. Смотрите сами. Ну, ключевая фраза про обед.
Hello. Is it possible to debug remotely Opera Mini? Or will it be possible some days?
I was going to go like that. Well, Opera Mini is a bit of a special case because it's effectively a thin client. All the rendering and even some of the JavaScript that Opera Mini does understand happens completely on the server. The server then creates a formatted down static version and sends it to Opera Mini. And every time you then, if there are, say, click events, it fires a new request to the server and the server processes it. So at the moment, there is no way to do any debugging in that sense of Opera Mini, I'm afraid.
Someday?
Possibly.
Somehow.
Possibly. I can't promise it, but even just, speaking as, not as Opera employee, but just in general, I would say it would sound very difficult to do because it's just the architecture doesn't lend itself that well with a thin client on the device itself. Possibly. There are some tips and tricks of how to actually do stuff, get certain output from the Opera Mini server. There is an article up. I haven't got the URL off the top of my head, but I can send you something if you want. That just shows simple things like how to get the actual process source of what the server has sent me to the device and that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, that's a limit at the moment of what you can do.
Yeah, thank you.